Um, Hello, everybody. Welcome to what's our fifth episode of Round the Table with Authors of the Resistance. So, yeah, I can't believe it's already the fifth one, but the topic for today is Pride Month and the history of the Stonewall Uprising. And then, of course, we got our regular segments. But first of all, I wanted to open up this episode um, and take a minute to give a moment of silence for Jonathan Joss because obviously it's Pride Month, and to have lost someone who was such a huge part of the creative industry and another, indigenous life that happened to be a gay man who was just trying to, live his life and was somebody that many people respected and loved is just really, really saddening, and it's a total tragedy. So I thought that we should probably definitely take a moment to kind of give tribute to him. So we can do that for a second here. So, the Stonewall Uprising, and the reason why I like to call it like that. There's a documentary on PBS. I have shared it in the AOTR Discord server. If you haven't already watched it, I would highly recommend that everyone watch it. And there is also a website, stonewallforever.org, that has the digital monument. And you can go on there and you can contribute to it. I actually made a submission recently to thank the veterans of Stonewall and to give a little bit more of an emphasis to the fact that yes, it was a riot, and people say that, but I kind of feel like that's kind of minimized the effects in some ways. Not that it minimizes that we know that it was very violent, but there was a whole bunch of things that happened that led up to this event. It wasn't just an isolated situation. That was just what was so big that finally was kind of what you might call the shot heard around the world. Um, there were a lot of things happening, and so even in the Stonewall Uprising documentary, when they talk about that, the veterans that were there have even said it was really more of an uprising than people realize. It was people finally not only having done everything to try to separate themselves from being an issue for others, but still be able to be as authentic as they could be within reason for themselves, right? They had all these different societies, and um, they even had on different walls paintings that, said that don't do certain things, be respectful, keep your head down, kind of stuff. And so for a long time, people that fell under the LGBTQIA, and the T is very important, umbrella, were being just harassed just for existing, even when they tried to, make their own spaces that were supposed to be safe spaces for them. They were being told they couldn't go into different bars if people found out that they were homosexual, because there was this rumor in the New York bar scene that everyone that was gay would always come in and cause trouble, and they were kind of equating them with just being troublemakers, and it was very unfounded because a lot of these people were actually coming in as patrons, and they weren't going to do anything but buy a drink, and that was it, just like anybody else. But if they were perceived as being gay, or that was a rumor about them, even if it weren't true, or they were trans, they were being chased out of these places. So their solution was, okay, well then let's make our own establishments. And so this is a pretty pattern routine with a lot of different marginalized communities. Like, we've had our speakeasies, we've had, our juke joints, the different types of places for people to go and get entertainment. And basically they were just trying to, like, okay, we'll segregate ourselves. We will try to be respectful. We won't do anything that's going to make our neighbors uncomfortable. But even when they did that, they were still being targeted. And then the police were coming into their establishments and roughing people up, arresting them for unwarranted reasons, and, charging with all different kinds of ridiculous things. And they weren't doing anything wrong. They weren't, there wasn't even, it's not even like these were underground, like SM clubs. These were just regular, you're just average gay bars. And yeah, there were all different types of people that would come there. Um, and the Stonewall Inn was that. It was a very just regular bar. And people came in and they served to gay people, and they had gay workers, and it was supposed to be a safe space. And the cops kept coming and causing problems. And every time they would come, and the police brutality would get worse and worse and worse, until finally, one night in June 1969, somebody decided that it wasn't going to happen anymore, that was it. And they had been talking about things. They had, like I said, they formed a lot of different coalitions. They were trying to kind of find a way to fight for their civil rights. And that also corroborated with this. This was very marginalized. Uh, all these communities were intersectional, so they kind of got together to work on some different things simultaneously. So you will find that a lot of our BIPOC activists from the 60s that worked in the civil rights also were involved in Stonewall. This is a very common overlap. It's just because of the time period when it was going on and how many people were trying to come together to build these coalitions. And that's what started a lot of what we have now, and a lot of our um, kind of like deconstructing some of the different biases, especially when it comes to like psychology, happened because of different people that were present or privy to Stonewall. Um, and, like they had it taken because it used to be considered a diagnostic mental disorder. They got that removed in the 70s. And so these different people that finally did this, and it really was an uprising. It was not just this one big riot and everybody's just all out chaos. That did happen, that is true. But these people were activists who were activated in a moment where there was no other choice. There was literally no other option. We're either going to continue to be beaten down and physically abused and harmed and unalived, um, or we're just going to have to just not let that happen anymore. And so a lot of times people are like, well, who picked up the first brick? And that's something that they emphasize. That doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter who picked up the first brick. What matters is the people that took them. What matters is the amount of people who, just for being their authentic selves, were targeted by cruel neighbors and a bigoted police force that was being weaponized by the citizens in New York against people who were not doing anything wrong and nothing to them. So, um, these people really are, they're the ones that they lost friends and family. They their entire lives were changed in a moment because of Stonewall, and a lot of them came out of it fighting harder, and they're the ones that paved the way for people to have the rights that they have now. And I think it's really important that, especially younger people who are just starting to come out and recognize who they are, that they really understand what has happened before them. And, some of these people are in their 70s, 80s, 90s at this point, um, and what they opened up. And to understand that as we speak, their rights that they fought so hard for are being backpedaled on and repealed, and people can't even live in their own homes. They're consensually married to whomever they choose without having to worry about things like what happened to Jonathan Joss and his husband Tristan. And their animals. The whole story's just. And now there are people saying that it wasn't a hate crime, but the things that were launched at these two men the whole time that they lived there, and the lack of even concern for loss of life, including their own pets, just shows you how far that this kind of hatred will go. And that's right now in 2025 Pride Month, at the very beginning of it. That's how it got started. So it's really important that we recognize what it means to be an ally, and that we constantly honor and look back and never forget who all was involved. And I mean, Marsha P. Johnson is a name many people know, which is great, but Marsha wasn't the only person. Like, there's Stormy DeLaury, there's, Harvey Milk, there's a lot of people. And with what's going on with, even, I don't even like to say his name, but with Hexbeth, what he said about trying to change, you know, military naval vessels that are named after people that are honorary and things like that, in particular Harvey Milk. All of these things are happening and they're coinciding, and that's not for no reason at all. So it's very important, I feel like, that while we celebrate Pride, and yes, come out, be happy, celebrate it, because that's one of the biggest, most important things that people need to realize about um, why people who show their pride are so forward with this isn't because they're trying to shove it down anybody's throats, but it's because they're trying to live for the people that haven't in their most authentic way and be who they know they are. That's it. And so it's really important that we remember that creatives, a lot of times, there's a lot of creatives that are under the LGBTQIA umbrella, tons and tons of really artistic and talented people. Um, and protest songs, some of our best stories and movies and art literally come from the experiences of those people. So it's not at all uncommon to see, activism in your musicians and your artists and your writers. And in all honesty, you should, because art's supposed to reflect life, right? It's like, and these are things that are happening around us. So, with it being Pride Month, celebrate in realizing, like I always talk about, and I'm going into my own segment a little bit here now, for your creative pot, okay? This is a great month for that. This is a great month to be inspired by life and the rainbow of different types of people that there are, and finding the beauty all around you, but also taking the time to honor those people who did come before us to pave the way for us to be able to do what we now, and to continue to fight for those things, because if we don't, the next generation after us isn't going to have the same things that they got for us, and we didn't even really get them for that long. Let's be real, it's only been a decade since gay marriage has even been legal. That's a long time on some aspects, but really not, because it's only been 50 years since Stonewall happened. So yeah, like, there is a song that I just found that really fueled my creative pot. I shared it with both of you, I believe, but actually there's two. But the first one is "This Song Shouldn't Exist." Um, it's on YouTube. Look it up. It's DJ Enzy, I think is his name, and all of the proceeds are going towards the kids in Gaza. The few that, because we're losing more and more by the day, but the few survivors that we still have in Holocaust torn Palestine. Um, and I believe that some of that went towards the flotilla too. So everything that he's got a bunch of different things listed on um, where the proceeds are going to help different Palestinian human aid and resources to get to the people that need it. Um, and so that's been a really good one. And I mean, it's a great song, and it just really had me like writing all kinds of stuff. And I just polished up a short story called Deportations in a Pandemic, and pretty proud of it, honestly. And I published that yesterday. So it's obviously worked. It helped me really get into the gear, and I know that that's something that Kendra really appreciates, is the music thing. Another one is called The Survivor by Steve Biddison, and they're great pump up music, and they've both just been some things that have made me go, okay, yeah, these are great for refilling the creative pot and, putting out as much as I can, um, to try to get June off to a great start and showing my own pride and celebrating and offering safe spaces and elevating names that need to be elevated, particularly as it pertains to Stonewall. That's been most of the people that I've been talking about lately as far as my teachable moments that I do just because I like to do those. So yeah, that's basically what I got on that is listen to the protest music and go support the musicians that are actually talking about making the activism music and being like, hey, this is what we're doing here, and go find your queer authors and writers and also Juneteenth is this month, so support your BIPOC and elevate your Black and your Indigenous and your marginalized communities a lot this month because they deserve to be seen and not ignored and not have history be steamrolled over them. In fact, I I showed I showed you, Kendra, a conversation that I had. Um, Someone posted in a group about Kindred by Octavia Butler, and at first I thought, well, maybe she just didn't understand. So I started breaking down some character things, and of course, the character is Ruth, and it's the book's Kindred. So she was talking about how she didn't believe that some things about him were believable because he would sometimes be nice to Dana and da 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 da. And I was like, what makes you think like narcissists aren't always mean? Sadists are definitely not constantly sadistic. I mean, really? This doesn't add up. This can't be true. And that immediately, I mean, a lot of people were like, well, this sounds like some white privilege take. And she was, of course, she fit the stereotype from what she was presenting. But I gave her the benefit of the doubt, and I was like, well, maybe it's because you don't understand this kind of mentality of this kind of person. Let me break this down. Maybe you don't understand Stockholm Syndrome. Again, let me break this down. There's a couple of things that maybe you should look up. And if you, and this woman looked like she was like my age, like in her 40s. These are concepts you would think she would already have known, but I digress. Um, Anyways, so I'm like, okay. So then I read down, and somebody basically tells her, and it was a black woman, um, why don't you just admit it sounds like you just wanted to get some torture essay scenes on black women and that you weren't happy that you didn't get enough of them? And her response to it was very telling. Like, she was like, yeah, thanks for playing. And I was
They
just
basically
like,
like brush the statement off. Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, and somebody else said, this is a disgusting thing to say to a black femme. And I said, I made a comment above to address your original post here. But now that I see this, I just need to let you know that you definitely need to learn some ethics and probably get a lot of therapy. Um, because everything you say here is showing your racism, and it's just despicable and disgusting. Like, seriously? And of course, everybody just about on those comments crucified that lady. I mean, FAFO. But okay, so Bev, why don't we go ahead and do your mental health minute after that?
Okay, well, actually, this was something that I talked to today at work. We were talking about stress responses, and everybody has a stress response. And the most obvious answer to what is a stress response is the fight or flight instinct, which is technically flight, man, fight or flight, freeze or fawn. So there's technically four possibilities with the stress response that we all have, and it's hardwired in our brain. It literally, it is like base instinct. And the problem is that we're wired to protect ourselves with the stress response because, you walking through the savannah in Africa and you face to face with a lion, you have to run. If you're in the jungle and you're face to face with a tiger, you got to do something. You either got to fight or you got to run. And so our stress response is very primal. They call it the lizard brain. You know, it's the very, very base, like the amygdala and everything like that. I won't go into the brain stuff, but in any case, whenever we're dealing with that stress response, the thing that we have to do on a daily basis is, if it's overactive, sometimes triggered by trauma, sometimes triggered by just generalized anxiety disorder, that anxiety can really eat you alive. And one of my favorite things to tell people who are struggling with anxiety is, don't forget, anxiety lies. And the depression also lies, but for this topic, it's anxiety. But with anxiety, though, it is your brain literally overreacting. And so the trick is, and it really is kind of a trick, is you got to figure out ways to calm that stress response. You know, ways to reduce it, get your nervous system to literally calm down, because it's actually activating and triggering these anxious moments. And I don't think a lot of people realize how hardwired it is into our biology. And, you know, there's a lot of techniques, And my favorite one is learning to practice mindfulness, which is a beautiful technique. And I thought at first I could never do it, because most people are like, oh, well, that's meditation. And it can be meditation. Some people can meditate. I cannot. I am ADHD, and no way can I sit there and focus on meditation, at least in the way most people believe it is. So most people, of course, think meditation is just clearing your mind, right? Well, it's actually more of focusing the mind. And that's one of those ways to calm that nervous system, is to bring focus to your brain. So all of this stuff that's going on here, if you're focused over here, it kind of is like, oh, wait, do I really need to be firing off all these signals? And then you can calm that nervous system reaction down. And I use a bunch of different cards that I got off various websites. And one of them is called Hack Your Nervous System. Wonderful set of cards. But it gives different various ways that people can calm that nervous system, bring that into alignment, and just give the body a chance to rest. Because if you're anxious all the time, you're exhausted. You just are. You know, that buildup of anxiety, your body constantly on edge, it's exhausting. And nobody likes that, because you go like that for so long, and then you just finally collapse out of just a sheer tiredness, and you don't sleep well because you're exhausted, and nobody sleeps really well when they're exhausted. It's more of the sleep of the dead or something like that, you know? And so whenever so mindfulness and distress tolerance, all these techniques are there to calm down that physical response that we're doing. So what I was going to suggest to start yourself, if you're looking to get your anxiety under control or get things, you know, in check, is work on starting mindfulness. There are tons of YouTube videos on mindfulness. Some of them you're going to like, some of them you're going to hate. But just basic techniques like box breathing. Really cool breathing technique that you breathe in, hold your breath, breathe out, hold your breath, breathe in, hold your breath. And it trains your brain to tolerate stress. Because when you hold your breath for a few seconds, your brain's going, hey, I can't breathe. And then, but whenever you get that breath, your brain's like, oh, okay, a breath was coming. It was okay. And then you repeat that pattern. So it trains your brain not to, like that freak out that anxiety is of our nervous system. It trains you very slowly to, okay, I don't have to have this reaction. It's going to be okay. And so my thing is today, just research a little into mindfulness. There are so many techniques. You can mindfully eat. You can mindfully read. You can mindfully do just about anything you can imagine. Mindfully run. I wouldn't recommend mindfully driving, but but
Well, don't
anyways, so
mindlessly do it either.
things like that.
Okay, that's pretty awesome. That's great advice. And I feel like mindfulness as a practice then eventually does help you get your mindset. And when you get your mindset, it kind of like that's the set mode you're in. It becomes more
Mm-hmm.
base nature. And so you don't, even though the instinct is always there, you don't react off the instinct so quickly because it gives you kind of that pause moment to reflect on, is this the moment to go off on this person or not?
And we're even trying to implement that with our son, who is now 4, and so he's kind of getting to that age where he can kind of start trying to implement that himself more often than us having to, be like, hey buddy, take a breath, or something like that. And it's really awesome. He actually got this little Fisher Price record player for
Oh,
Christmas last year, and it actually comes with a mindfulness record
that's great.
with little songs on it and stuff. So we've been trying to use that with him. He's kind of an anxious kid. I blame myself for that. I struggle with anxiety really badly and have my entire life. Um, but we're working really hard to teach him mindfulness so he can reel himself in instead of needing us for that co-regulation. It's teaching him to make sure he can get control of for that anxiety on his own.
So he'll be able to self regulate as an adult.
Yeah.
That's great. That's good.
I think the earlier the better with mindfulness.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I talk to people every day, and I think to myself, you can tell, who unfortunately the people are that have not been taught to do so, and to like take care of their own mental health and not just fly off the handle you know, at the drop of a hat. And that, just weren't taught these practices at all, even if it's just taking a breath when you're starting to get upset. You can tell who those people are. And it's a lot of them, unfortunately.
It is a skill, it not everybody is taught very early, and anybody can pick it up and learn it at any time, whether
Yeah.
you're 16, 17, 70. It's a skill you can bring into your life.
Yep, that's a really good one. I'm very, and especially now, like as it correlates to even the topic, like when something happens, like I said, gauge if it's the right time to pick up the brick, guys. It might be. It might be. I can't say it won't be. There's a very high probability this is happening. But don't go off half cocked, because the difference between us and them is that we do value life, right? We don't want to be the ones responsible for hurting somebody who doesn't deserve it because they said something stupid in their ignorance, as opposed to someone who's actually going to come out with, like what happened to Jonathan Joss. And,
Right.
That's just the sad reality.
That is.
So, mindfulness, so we can seriously consider and be allies and be real activists so that we can advocate for the people that need it, but also lead by example because people are going to look to that activism one day. And then, I'm not saying we're going to be the ones that go down as the legends like Stonewall people. Those people are great. No matter what, forever, they're the goats. But there's going to be the next generation every time. And there has to be. That's kind of the point of it all. There has to be. Because cisgender people are not the only kind of people, and it's been this way throughout history of all of mankind everywhere in the world. Gay people are not going to stop existing. And I know that I don't want to see my niece or my cousin and their wives get hurt. I have people that are married to the same gender in my family. I have trans people. I'm sure most of us actually do if we want to be honest with ourselves. And having to bury any of them because of that is not okay with me. I'm not okay with that. I mean, I'm not okay with anybody having to lose their child because somebody else didn't like the choices that they made for themselves. Like, that's not okay. So, that's what we have to remember, like, that those moments of standing up. And if you're going to be that person in whatever uprising might come next, make sure you're mindful about it. Know what you're getting into, because it's like Jane Fonda said. Remember the civil rights in Stonewall. This isn't a game. You know, she's this woman that's been arrested multiple times for actually doing exactly what she says she's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you know, that's my honest dreams myself. Like, I want to be like Jane Fonda and Dolly Parton. A little bit of Elvira in there. those are like the greatest women to me. And Lily Tomlin's pretty badass too, but you know what I'm saying? Like, what they've given and contributed and how old they are, still out here going, hey, what is this? That's me someday, my friends. That is me. If there's a God and he keeps me on this planet going through all this for that long, yes, I will be that lady, that old, on whatever place I can, even if it's on a soapbox on the corner, letting people know this isn't cool. So, that said, Kindra, let's hear about your plants. How's Kendra's green thumb going?
Yeah, it's going. Head to boxing, of course, my blueberries, because our neighbor has peacocks. The peacocks like to free range through the neighborhood, so they've been kind of eating my blueberries. Yeah, so they're boxed in now. I also took some marigold seedlings and planted them throughout my garden as kind of like a natural pest control, for like caterpillars and different things. What else? I have to harvest peas. I know that my pea plants are insane right now. I have pods everywhere. My rosemary is taking over its own raised bed, so I'm not going to be able to put anything in it. I finally picked the one lonely carrot that I had because I noticed that it had gotten so hot that it was starting to bolt. You know, it was going to go to seed on its own. So I was like, okay, I'm going to have to pick this thing. I don't know if it's ready. And I got one really pale orange carrot out of it. Now, did I eat it? No, because once they bolt, they don't taste very good. They don't smell great. They don't taste great. So I kind of had to just kind of put that out for the rabbits in the woods out there, and I'm sure they'll love it. I also the other day, took my son outside. I had a bunch of seedling starters for different heirloom peppers, heirloom tomatoes, and we actually moved the seedlings into larger pots that are made out of peat moss. So when they're ready to go into the ground or into a much larger vessel, or in the case for me, I'm going to hang mine upside down, that pot will just kind of deteriorate on its own and break down, and you don't have all those nasty chemicals and all that crap going into them. There's that. I don't know how many are out there. I know because we're supposed to get some rain. I don't know how heavy it's going to be. I spent like half an hour after he went down to bed out there moving everything onto my covered porch so they wouldn't get pummeled. And then let's see here. I went and bought a bunch more seeds from Home Depot because I can't help myself. Actually want to create a little area with medicinal herbs and flowers and stuff like that. So I mostly got some stuff for that. And then my wildflower bed that I had, those are starting to dry out, which they normally do. You know, they'll go to seed and they'll they're not invasive, but they will reseed themselves. So what I'm doing is I've got a lot of Nigella, love in the mist out there. And once those pods, after the flower blooms, it creates like a really decent sized pod, maybe about this big, full of seeds. And if you just let them go after everything dries out, you'll have Nigella again next year. But once those pods turn completely brown, you can go out there and actually harvest those seeds on your own. So I'm going to be doing that and sending some to my mom because she doesn't have any Nigella at her house, and I think she should.
Awesome.
But it's really easy to do. The pods break open pretty easy. You just basically have to kind of like, I don't think this is actually what happens, but it's kind of like the center of it where you have the stamen and all of that stuff. They grow and kind of like envelop itself. So you just basically have these little sections that you just peel open and the seeds are right there and they just come right out. So I'm going to harvest as much of that as I can.
Natural
and
seed packet.
maybe replant and send some to my mother, and I'm going to have like 1 million of them. But I had some phlox out there too, and I know that's pretty much already reseeding itself because I moved it because it got pummeled by rain that we had, and a bunch of seeds just fell onto the ground. And I was like, oops. Okay, well, I'm going to have phlox outside the raised bed. That's okay. But yeah, that's where we're at.
That's pretty awesome. Okay, well, we got about 20 minutes here, and I thought that, again, history of Stonewall and Pride, right? I thought we would take a peek over at the monument, and of course, you guys can go back because I know you guys aren't going to be able to see it on here with me, but you guys will see it on the video, and basically just ask you if there's anything that you guys have to add about what I've said. We'll start with you, Bev. What do you got to say about Stonewall and Pride?
Well, I think being an openly queer person right now is really tough. I mean, not that it's ever super easy, because you're always going to run into bigotry.
Right.
But when I decided to be open about my sexuality and my gender identity, I don't regret it. And as many annoying little snags you hit with these bigots that you run into all the time, I've just learned to be like, you're going to be like that, and I can't do anything about it. But if it weren't for the people at Stonewall, I wouldn't have the option to even be out, because, even among some of the, being ace and non-binary, even among the queer community, we're ostracized from some areas because, we have the, well, ace people aren't really queer, and it's like, well, yes, we are. We're not straight, or, and we have a different way of looking at life, and that's at the and it's like I just made a post today, and it was like, the idea is, it's not about who we sleep with, it's not even about it's all about who we are, not what we do. And I think that's where a lot of people get hung up on, is they're like, well, we don't care who you sleep with. Well, you get mad even when we don't sleep with anybody.
Right.
And it's like, you still call us a bunch of groomers or pedophiles and all this stuff like that. And, none of it is warranted, and it's like, it doesn't matter what we do. Even ace people who have, and some of us are sex repulsed. Like, there's no sex at all. But, it's like they get this idea in their head that it's all about who you sleep with. And it's like, it's not. It's who we are. Who we are as people, and all we want to do is live with authenticity, and that's it. Just to be who we are. And it's like, well, you shove it down our throat. No, we just want to be. That's it. Just be. And that's what Stonewall was all about. Was those people just wanted to be who they were in peace. and they couldn't. And I think that, it's a natural consequence that, what happened happened, because you can only push people so far. Even the nicest people in the world will break.
Yep.
So.
Yep, that's all true. Absolutely. And that was something that I feel that people really need to understand is this wasn't just about who people loved and their orientation as much as it also was about their identity. And that's why we can't erase that T. The transgender people were a very big part of Stonewall. And a lot of them, like you said, like a lot of people, there were ace people. I'm sapio demisexual. I've been celibate and single for 5 years now, and I really don't see that changing because as a sapio demi, I'm attracted to intelligence first, and then I have to have a connection to even feel any kind of sense of arousal, or there's just nothing there. Not that I don't care about people or that I haven't ever loved people. Obviously, yes, I have. I've been married more than once. And I've been out as a sappy demisexual since I was in my mid 20s, and the first time I had a connection with someone who was you know not cisgender, not a hetero relationship, was a person who is non-binary now, and wonderful person. I'll always care about them. Every person I've had relationships with I still very much care about, but again, like I said, it's very hard for me because intelligence and intellect is so important. And yet, I support a lot of LGBTQIA artists, and I got tons of friends that are within that. I go to like cabaret in Eugene, and I've been asked by people, well, is there anything you get out of this? Well, yeah, I love the art. That's what I get out of it. And people have asked me, well, what about voyeuristic tendencies? And I was like, well, yeah, I like what I get out of it, but I'm not doing anything. I'm paying these people for what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why I go see the entertainment. I enjoy it. I mean, it's that appeals to me. But again, I'm not in any relationships, nor am I committed to any kind of you know actual interests. And it's just kind of not that it could never happen again. It's just not something that happens very much. And the older that I've gotten, especially as I come into perimenopause, those desires have very much waned. And I'm just seeing that abrosexuality is actually very valid. You know what I'm saying? Like, you might be surprised by how you change and how things evolve, but that still doesn't take away the fact that you fall under the queer umbrella. You see what I'm saying? You just want to exist to be able to live your life, and especially in the United States, where we're supposed to be able to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are supposed to be things that you know they're inalienable, right? So why were they even doing this then, and why is it happening again now? um, and like you said, as I'm going through this here, they're seeing all these pictures of different people, and all the different people that are represented in this. This is just people who want to be able to give the chance that everyone should have to be able to be happy and be themselves in peace, and they're not hurting or harming anyone, and it's not shoving it down your throat. You don't have to be gay just because somebody else is gay, but you shouldn't be giving them hell because of it. That's all that they're asking for. How do you feel about that, Kendra? What do you have to add about Stonewall and Pride Month?
So, I mean, obviously, Stonewall is very paramount, very important to where we are now. And I can't thank those people enough for that. I can't imagine a world where, like my trans cousin and his wife couldn't get married, or where he couldn't go through his transition and be accepted. But I mean, I know there's a lot of folks out there that obviously do not accept their relationship, and you know what, that's on them. It says more about them
Yeah.
than it does my cousin. Full stop. He's an amazing human being, always has been. I mean, I knew him prior to the transition. It's always been amazing. His wife is wonderful. So just to think that, before that it was much worse than it is now. and that they couldn't have this relationship openly, I can't thank them enough for what they've done.
Yeah, I'm on learningforjustice.org now, and the headline here is Teaching Stonewall. Stonewall's history remains largely forgotten and unknown among young people. In the cultural imagination, it remains shrouded in myth, but the true Stonewall story can be taught. Here's how and why. And we are doing that right now. And again, that's why I said it is so important that our young people who are coming out and celebrating learn everything they can about the veterans that came before them, what they did, and how they can continue to honor that legacy so that they can have the things they deserve to have. Because if it's up to people that are bigoted, they are going to do everything they can to try to erase the things that we've already accomplished and prevent you from knowing them so that you don't even realize what rights are being stripped away from you because you didn't even know you had them. And that actually applies to so many things about just rights as it applies to humans and America right now. On our TikTok live, which Bev sadly missed out on, but we had Kerrigan Byrne. It was awesome. We kind of talked about that, and I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, June 1969, the police raided the New York bar called the Stonewall Inn, and it erupted into a days-long rebellion. It wasn't just a incident, a riot that just lasted a few hours. It lit a fire under the fight for LGBTQIA rights, and it's very important that we don't forget Stonewall or anybody that was involved with it, and how creatives reflect on how Stonewall has changed art in the half a century since that Saturday, June 28th, 1969. And again, this was because of an early morning police raid in Greenwich Village at the Stonewall Inn, and that became known through the headlines as the Stonewall Riots and is literally what sparked the gay liberation movement as it correlated with civil rights. So for Pride Month, say it loud, gay is proud. June is Pride Month. It's a time to celebrate sapphic, gay, bi, trans, queer and questioning, asexual, intersex people and their rights. But Pride isn't just for people that fall under LGBTQIA. It's also for their allies and the people that stand up and are willing to be like, hey, this is not okay. And it's good to have people like that, which I think that kind of falls under you, right, Kendra? You're an ally. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you have family members and you're a friend to the movement. So you could be out there right alongside us marching, and if not, in spirit anyways. So that's pretty much what I got for us tonight. Do you guys have any final words that you'd like to add or anything you'd like to say on this topic?
I think we covered just about everything. Just, no matter what your gender, your sexuality, whatever it is, stay proud, even if you can't be out.
That's true. Even if it's just posting a Facebook cover or sharing, your favorite trans artists, or even just spreading the message about the history of what we talked about tonight. And like I said, and I actually probably should show everybody real quickly, is on Stonewall, you can go to stonewallforever.org and enter the monument. And if you go through the whole monument, there is a part where you can add to the monument. And
50 years.
You can also watch the documentary, and it's basically a whole digital walkthrough. At the end of it, like I said, there's a place where you can contribute to the monument. You can add your picture and a little statement and your name with whatever you have to say. If you want to do something like give your thanks or your gratitude, like you said, Kindra, or you want to kind of give homage for them giving you the courage to live your authenticity. Bev, you can do that. And again, you just go through, you guys can look at the video that I'm going to have on the final screen and, see to go through the entire exhibit and explore it, and then go through to the last one and you can add that. So that's kind of a cool way to contribute to the monument, and even if you can't get out there, you know what I'm saying, and just be able to kind of celebrate Pride, So that's all I got for tonight. It was great talking to the both of you. I won't keep you too much longer, and until next time, have a great Wednesday night.